I'm Georgie Crawford.
I can't wait.
I'd love to just get a sense of how you are.
I'm feeling really good. This week I got the news that I'm 3 years cancer free. Now, doctors don't really like to use the term cancer free because, they say, can we ever be sure that there's, no cancer in our bodies? But I went for my chest MRI last week, and I was really nervous about it. For the first 2 to 3 years is the most likely you are to have a recurrence. So the first 2 to 3 years you're kind of living on your nerves a little bit. And I remember they told me that around the time when I got diagnosed. Professor Hill was like, just get to 2 years, get to 3 years, and you'll be flying. So it felt like a really big deal to get to the 3 years. And I don't massively celebrate when I get a clear scan or anything. With cancer, I'm just very careful of it. I kind of just like to back away from it. And that's where I struggle a little bit on social media, because obviously I share my story, but even this week writing down, my scan was clear. You almost feel like you're jinxing yourself a little bit. And so I don't go OTT, but I definitely feel this week such a huge sense of relief.
When you got that news this week, what was going on in your head?
Yeah, it was an up and down week, but definitely when I got that news, it felt like I was 10 stone lighter. I get a mammogram and an MRI every year. And I was totally fine for the mammogram. I wasn't that worried. But something about going into the machine, it's very triggering. It reminds me of, when I was first diagnosed and they were trying to find out if my cancer had spread. So going into that machine last Monday, it was really tough. It just brought me back. I might as well have been sitting in the oncology day ward while they were trying to find a vein, and I just burst out crying. And I'd been really strong that morning. Jamie and my mum were like, we want to come with you. We want to sit in the car. And I was like, no, I'm fine. If we make less of a big deal of this, then I won't be upset. But just that moment brought it all back to me. You start looking at your life from the outside in when you're waiting for results in this weird way. I'd look at Jamie and Pia together and I'd say to myself, if anything happens to me, they'll be fine. So your mind goes to all of these crazy places. But I did have intense counselling, and I've learned how to not play out that movie so much and try to bring myself back to the present moment.
In the moment when you're triggered, what would be go-to self-care tips to kind of get yourself back grounded again?
That's such a good question. The first thing I do is go outside. I found nature very healing in my recovery. So when I go outside, I just feel so much more grounded. I feel calmer. I feel more in control. When I first got sick, I remember just being so sad. And I said to my brother Mick, actually, I didn't want this to be my story. And he was like, but this is your story. And that was a moment, a moment of it that I knew I had to accept what was happening. I had to acknowledge it. It was the first time my mind went to that place. I can't deny that this is happening. So that was a huge step for me. And then I suppose cancer gives you time. So when Pia would nap for 2 hours a day, I'd sit in my garden. I just kind of process things. My whole family were amazing. They just came and helped so much that it allowed me to have time to myself. Before I got sick, I wouldn't want anyone to mind Pia because I wanted her all to myself, and I wouldn't allow myself to do anything for myself because I felt guilty. But I suppose when I got sick, I didn't feel so guilty anymore. So I think before I got sick, I put all of my energy outwards all the time. So I worked in spin for 10 years in the radio station. I went straight from college to being a spinny to getting a job in the office. And every day I'd go in, I'd have breakfast at my desk, I'd have lunch at my desk. I would work overtime. And, you know, I was one of the people that kind of was trying to build my career in the recession. So I wore stress like a badge of honor. I thought, you know, the more stressed I am, the more busier I am, and the more important I am. And what I was failing to do was give myself a bit of my energy. So I'd come home from work, I was so tired, couldn't function. My husband Jamie had been diagnosed with MS. So in our eyes, in our world, he was the sick one. All of our energy went to him. So after work, I'd be like, you go for a run, you go play hockey, I'll make the dinner, I'll do all the ironing. On Saturdays, he'd go off and, you know, do whatever he was doing, play a match. I'll do all, you know, the housework. It never occurred to me that I should be taking better care of myself, because I was like, no, I'll survive, I'll be fine. When I got sick and I started giving attention to myself and like loving myself more and caring, valuing my life more, everything started to change. The energy I was putting out was different and I was getting it back. You know, I was like, whoa, all I had to do was invest in myself for a while.
I know you've spoken about like when you were sick. What was your journey with cancer like?
Yeah, so Pia was 7 months old and I found a lump in my breast. There's no breast cancer in my family. I was 32. I didn't really think I needed to be breast aware. The only person I really knew that had breast cancer under the age of 50 was Juliana Rancic and Kylie. So like, I didn't know anyone in Ireland really that had it. So breast cancer was not on my radar, and I was really good at getting smear tests and stuff, but I never checked my breasts. So I found my lump by accident in the middle of the night. And I just immediately knew it was bad news. I just wasn't optimistic at all, because Breast Cancer Ireland say, you, like, know what your normal is. So my normal, I've never had a lump, I've never had a cyst. It was just really sinister. It was really hard. I couldn't move it. It was kind of like a bone sticking out of my chest. So my mind immediately went to the worst place. And then 5 days after I found my lump, they told me I had cancer. Everything happened really fast for me. I was really lucky. Professor Arnie Hill operated on me within 2 weeks. I had 2 lumpectomies, which is they just cut out the cancer as opposed to a mastectomy. Then they brought me in and told me that I need 5 months of chemotherapy, which I was so shocked about. I had stage 2 breast cancer. So the chemo was to happen after my surgery, so that if any little tiny cancer cell had have escaped from my breast, that this chemo would hopefully wipe it out. So it felt like a really big security blanket, and I didn't even think twice about it. So 5 months of chemo, 4 weeks of radiotherapy, and then onto a drug called tamoxifen for up to 5 years. So things got like serious really quickly. So it was a year of really tough, like digging deep to get through it.
And what impact do you think it had on your life at the time?
It's really weird because I was diagnosed on my maternity leave, like I was getting ready to go back to work. So I was so ready to go back out into the world, because, you know, having a baby, it's a mad journey. But I had amazing support when I had Pia, and I felt really ready to go back to work. Like my mum and my mother-in-law were always around, and I was so lucky that I felt like I could kind of give Pia to them and go back to work. So when I found out that now I had another year of being at home, I was like, oh my God, like I miss my friends. I didn't recognize my life anymore. So it was very hard. I remember, like, I'd always look out the window, and my mum came up to my house every single morning. So she'd often be with Pia and I'd be kind of wandering around the house. But I'd always look out the window and be like excited for the postman to come, just because it was maybe he might bring a letter or a card, or, you know, I was getting so much stuff from people. Like my friends were sending me care packages. I was getting letters from people I hadn't seen in years. So I was always really excited because that was my connection to the outside world. So I always say, when people say now, like, what'll I do? I'm like, oh, just send something in the post. It's a lovely thing to get. And then Jamie went through this really weird phase of ordering loads of light bulbs on Amazon. And then I was like, no, not another Amazon package for Jamie. Like, I want, you know, something from the outside world for me. That was a weird thing. But yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. But, you know, the nurses in the Beacon, like, became my friends, and like, I look forward to seeing them, and like, it brought me and my family even closer. Like, we always called ourselves the party of five, my stepdad and my two brothers. So everyone had a role, you know, everyone's life stopped. My mum couldn't like do anything because she was so worried all the time. So we all just rallied and we all just got extremely close. And it wasn't all bad, you know, but it was definitely a lot of kind of tears on the couch, pep talks from Jamie, and kind of focusing on the calendar of when it would be over.
Yeah. Is there any like impact that it still has on your life now, like positive or negative?
I think a great thing that I did was share my story on Instagram, because I would get messages from people who survived cancer and got their life back. And I used to say to Jamie, like, I don't think I'll ever laugh the same way again. And he was like, Georgie, you know, he'd been through it all with his MS diagnosis. He's like, you know, this won't hurt so much in a couple of years. And I get gorgeous messages from girls who are like, you know, my mum died when I was 5, and from you talking about it, I kind of know how she felt now and how much she must have loved me. You know, we get strength from each other that way. I thought that people who may be going through something would connect with my podcast. And then very quickly I realized we're all going through something. So many more people connected with it than I ever first imagined.
Why did you create the Good Glow podcast?
So I was sitting at my desk one day and I got this message from a lady in America, and she said, hey Georgie, thanks for sharing your story. You know, got great inspiration from it, but also just wanted to say something to you. I had cancer 10 years ago, and if I could give myself any advice, it would have been, don't worry so much about it coming back. She's like, my cancer hasn't come back. I went on to have more kids. And when she said that, I like went in to read the news and got on with my day, and I was like, oh God, I feel really happy after getting that message. I'm so lucky I shared my story, because I get messages like that, you know, messages that would stop you in your tracks once a week, but like messages every day from people going, keep going. And I was like, what about the people who don't share their story? Like, what if I had, you know, breast cancer and I was sitting at home and, you know, I was feeling lonely in this world and I didn't have access to messages like this. So I was like, I need to share these stories. Yeah, so that's kind of how the Good Glow was born, and it's just been nothing but positive. My intention was pure, and I think that's why it worked.
It just sounds like it's all feeding into like this really incredible legacy. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind in life?
I just want my Pia to look after herself. Everything that I've been through over the last 3 years is enough for me to be happy with what I'm leaving her in terms of like, I want her to be like, yeah, my mom looked after herself. My mom went out for runs. My mom put herself first, and that's okay. I'm going to do that too.
I have one more question, and it's, what's your why?
Oh, what's my why? Oh my God. And like, why didn't I think about this before we came on? It was so obvious you were going to ask me this. I suppose, what's my why? Like, I'm such a huge family person. But like, my why is Jamie and Pia. You know, I get up every day. I want to be here for them. So I want to take better care of myself. So I'm here around for their lives, and to watch Pia get married and, you know, have an amazing life.